invited you to this panel on the 2022 midterm elections, and we titled it Expect the Unexpected. With the election just 31 days away, we know there's a lot of ground to cover, and it's coming very soon.
Trump, Donald Trump. The T word, Trump. The Trump factor.
The T word, Trump. The Trump factor.
Trump's world, the Trump White House. Trump, Donald Trump.
Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald who? Trump's cabinet. Trump. Donald Trump. Trump. Biden and Trump. And whether it's Trump or not.
What are the factors that Trump will be weighing right now? Donald Trump thing, a Trump rally.
Loyalty to Trump, the Trump administration.
We've had democracy on the ballot in several of our primary races that you've seen. There's this infrastructure within the own, Republican Party that certainly we've got experts on the panel that have spoken in a great deal of length about, like, where is the direction? Where is the post-Trump? Is it a post-Trump, era?
When you look at some of the polls, when you talk to some of the people, they are talking about, as Olin said, they're talking about the economy. They're talking about, Donald Trump. They're talking about a variety of issues.
So we've been talking for maybe 20 minutes or so, and we haven't yet mentioned the word Trump, I don't think.
I mentioned it. I mentioned him.
Oh, did you guys? Okay, yeah. So, Jonathan, on the T word, Trump, the Trump factor in this election.
Your timing is impeccable, as always. I don't just say that because you're my wife. I mostly say it because you're my wife. First of all, it's great to be here with you guys. I am a little bit late because I was taking a car up Connecticut Avenue with the one and only Maggie Haberman, my colleague, who I'm sure you all have heard of, who has a new book out about the T word, somebody she's covered for years, and she was going to a signing and a speech at Politics and Prose, which if you haven't been to yet, by the way, folks who don't live here, it's a really good bookstore that's either a long walk or a short drive from AU. And we were talking about the former president in the car, and since 1934, there have only been two midterm elections where the party in power picked up seats in both chambers of Congress. One was at the height of the Depression, FDR's first term in 34, and the other was 2002, George W. Bush's first term in the months after 9/11 and the lead up to the Iraq War. Two midterms that were extraordinary, for very different reasons, but extraordinary times. That led to gains for the party in power. Almost always the party that's out of power gains seats in midterm elections because there tends to be a backlash, or at least an itch with the party in power. What makes this midterm so interesting, I don't think it's on the same level as 34, mass unemployment and bread lines. And obviously, we have not had a sort of 9/11 level event that has sort of changed things. But it's not a typical midterm because of a couple of issues. One is we're talking about Roe versus Wade, a transformational Supreme Court opinion that came down, which really jolted this election. And the other is the former president. The fact that you have a polarizing, to use our favorite word, polarizing former president who is still front and center has, along with the abortion issue, allowed Democrats to at least make this something less of a referendum. And that's always what the party in power is trying to do in a midterm election, is make it less of a referendum, unless you're FDR, and more of a choice. And by making it more of a choice, you obviously limit the judgment on yourself. And I think that's what Democrats have done to some effect, is they've said, look, maybe you don't like the price at the pump, you don't like the president that much, but this is the alternative over here. The alternative over here ended legal abortion in America, and they're still beholden to a president who you just voted out of the White House and who is still acting recklessly. And I think that has given Democrats at least some hope. And it's given them some hope, not to have a good midterm, but just to have a less bad midterm. And the last thing I'll say is, and this is tied to Trump, the other thing that's helped Democrats beyond the former president still being in the mix and beyond the abortion issue is because the Republican Party is still so beholden to Trump, he effectively elevated a series of candidates, especially in Senate races, who, if we're being generous, are like a C-list. These are like replacement level type folks. And again, that's being kind in some cases.
Ask McConnell.
Yeah, don't take my word for it. Ask Mitch McConnell his view of the roster of candidates this year. And I think that has made this a better cycle for Democrats. I don't think it's going to help them in the House necessarily, but in the Senate, my goodness, this could have been an election. Don't you guys agree? Where the Republicans could have gained 5 Senate seats. And instead, they're struggling to find, at this point, frankly, one pickup. And hoping to hold on to Pennsylvania and then, get a 1-seat majority. God, that's a long way from the start of the year when they were recruiting all of these governors to run for the Senate, all of which turned them down. And I think that gets back to the heart of your question, which is the Trump factor, which still looms over the GOP so much, and his endorsements shaped so many of these primaries and has left them with candidates today that are lackluster at best.
Anita, let me ask you, one thing that kind of broke through this summer were the hearings on January 6th. Give us a sense, and obviously we'll have one more televised hearing, I believe, next week. Give us a sense of the impact of those hearings, politically speaking, and what do we think are going to actually come out of the hearings?
Yeah, they just announced that there's going to be another hearing on Thursday. We don't know exactly who's going to be testifying or what that's going to look like. We think it's the last hearing, but we're not exactly sure. They could come up with some more hearings and some more testimony before the election. We are expecting to see a report, possibly referrals to the Department of Justice. I don't think any of that's going to happen before the election. Of course, we always keep talking about Election Day, and of course, people are already voting, I should say. So, but people were really riveted, I think, to some of those hearings that we saw over these last few months. I think that there are people even in Trump's world, I would say, in orbit, that probably were surprised by some of those pieces. I think it's really, telling when you put it all together and when you saw sort of some of those videos that they put together or some of the testimony from some of these even young staffers who I knew covering the Trump White House who decided to speak up, because that's really been the issue, is who decided to speak up and who didn't. And so, of course, the part I was more fixated on was exactly what was happening in the White House that day, because that was what I was reporting on at the time, trying to figure that out. I don't know how this really translates politically, because it's Trump. And so if you if you're thinking about who to vote, I mean, most everyone has made up your mind on Donald Trump, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that is going to change anyone's mind. I mean, of course, the people that are looking, the people that everybody's after, of course, right, are these independents, these people that are they do go back and forth. They don't know what to do. They may not vote on, put him aside, put that aside. They're looking at some of the things that impact them. And so, you might find some people that really those hearings resonated with them because they really did get a bigger picture than they had before. If you'll talk to people on Capitol Hill who lived that day, I mean, it really impacted them, obviously, because they were reliving that day, but they learned a lot from that. And so, we're going to have to see sort of what that turns out to be. And of course, we won't have the results before the election, but I really don't think it's about sort of what that report says, right? It's going to be when you're seeing that and hearing about that, what is your feeling about that, about impeachment and, January 6th?
Right. Jonathan, let me bring you in here because you were in the Capitol on January 6th and wrote at length in the book about the experience and your reporting from that day. And there's a story in there just I think can be weaved in nicely to this panel discussion when we think about Trump and McConnell. We've mentioned McConnell a couple times. And this notion of, Republicans at the time, including Mitch McConnell, thinking that January 6th was probably the end of Trump politically, but that was not to be. Can you just share that brief story?
Well, first of all, thank you for the very, very subtle plug for the book. This Will Not Pass, Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or over here at Politics and Prose. You can get a signed copy. There's still some there. Would appreciate that. So
That was the not subtle plug.
no. And the C-SPAN cameras are here. Folks watching on C-SPAN, buy the book. Thank you for C-SPAN. So the 6th was effectively a 2021 version of what Access Hollywood was to 2016, right? There was this thought at the highest levels of the Republican Party of, well, this has got to be it. There's no way he can survive this one. It's all over. And I think that's what we saw in 16 with his comments on Access Hollywood. And there was that 48-hour period where I think that was the conventional wisdom. And I think that was the case with January 6th. Well, the outgoing president who refused to concede his defeat incited a violent mob to storm the Capitol. Well, surely the American people will not tolerate that, and surely he'll be consigned to the ash heap of American history. Well, not so fast. Look, this goes to the heart of the Republican challenge in this period that we're in. Is the Republican leadership is effectively taking their cues from the rank and file of their party. The leaders are bowing to their followers, and it's not much more complicated than that. Look, if Kevin McCarthy thought that tomorrow Donald Trump did not have the clout with the Republican voters any longer, Kevin McCarthy would say, Donald who? He'd forget about them. But they don't want to lose a primary, they being the leaders. So we had this remarkable situation where the leadership of one of our two major parties is completely contemptuous of the leader of their party, while the rank and file of the party largely still admires the leader. I mean, it's just that gap between the elites of the party and their view of Trump and the voters in the party. I can't remember a time in American history where you had that divide that was sort of years long in a party. It's just not sustainable. And I think if Trump is the nominee again in 24, it'll cause major fissures in the Republican Party. Just real fast, the night of the 6th, after the Congress reconvened, I had been evacuated with the Senate, and I came back with the Senate when they, of course, were back in the chamber that night to ratify the results of the Electoral College. The Capitol was a mess. It was filthy. There was dirt and grime on the floors. There was blood everywhere. There was trash. It was a total disgrace. And late that night, after the Senate had finished voting, I was still in the Capitol trying to catch some people as they left. And I know where Mitch McConnell typically leaves the Capitol at night, because I know the elevator that he takes down to the first floor. And so at about 1 a.m, I just stood down there and on the off chance that he hadn't left yet. And if he hadn't, I'd grab him as he came out off the elevator. And that's precisely what happened at about 1 a.m. on the night of January 6th, or I guess the morning of the 7th at this point. McConnell came out of the elevator, and he actually grabbed me first because he was looking for intelligence. He had been, of course, evacuated to Fort McNair, a nearby military base, and was sort of not aware of some of the politics of what was taking place. And he was curious about the 25th Amendment and was wondering if Trump's cabinet had been talking that day about trying to force Trump from office via the 25th Amendment. So he said to me, he said, "What are you hearing about the 25th Amendment?" In hindsight, what I should have said is, "Well, sir, pick up your cell phone and call your wife because she's in the cabinet and will probably have better insights than I would." I didn't have that kind of a fast reflex, and instead I just passed on what I had heard, some sort of intel and some chatter from the Capitol. But I wasn't going to let him get away without asking him a question, and so I said, "Senator, how do you feel?" And I asked him that because the previous 2 days he had seen, he lost his majority in Georgia on the night of January 5th, and they lost those two runoff elections. And then, of course, the 6th, his beloved Capitol was ransacked. Pretty tough back-to-back day at the office for Mitch McConnell. And so I said, "How are you feeling?" And he gave me an answer I'll never forget. He said, I feel exhilarated. I said, geez, how do you feel exhilarated? And I said, well, how so? And he said, Trump put a gun to his head and he pulled the trigger, and now he's totally discredited. And McConnell in that moment was immediately grappling with the politics of what had happened that day and was thinking, like I said earlier, well, there's no way Trump can survive this. And so this is my liberation day. I got 3 judges on the court from Trump. I got a big tax cut. It was pretty humiliating, but it's over now. And I got what I wanted out of him, and now he's gone forever, and we can all move on as a party. That was the mentality late that night of the 6th, was that I don't have to worry about it. And as we sit here a month from the midterm elections, Mitch McConnell may fail to regain the majority, which he desperately wants, because Donald Trump did not lose his clout. He remained the key figure in the party, and he effectively got through all of these candidates who may lose McConnell the majority once again.
The thing with the president, the White House is so at times frustrated to get these questions, and what they will often cite is this is somebody that has wanted this job for a while, right? It's not the first time that he ran for president. And 2, to them, this is the person who already beat Trump, right? And to now come in and get questions of, are you going to step down, and will that be for the good of the party? And there are some that have, those whispers have grown louder from members of the Democratic Party saying you should open new opportunity for a new generation to come in that can possibly galvanize a younger base, diverse base of voters. If you ask the White House and the president, they're saying, we just got here. We just had this summer where we passed all of this legislation. And we already beat the guy who likely going to be the contender.
And that's the key point, is that so much of this with Biden is contingent upon Trump. Or there's this remarkable codependency between our 2 favorite octogenarians here in American politics, this sort of game of chicken that we're seeing play out in slow motion between Biden and Trump. That's the key question. Look, I'll be totally honest with you. The rationale for Biden to run again, it hugely depends upon Trump being the nominee of the Republican Party. All right? Because then Biden can say, what Zolan just said is, I beat him once, I can beat him again, and we can't risk a messy primary when democracy itself's on the line. If Trump is not a candidate or isn't the nominee, it's, I think, a tougher sell for Biden, because then the party's going to say, well, we needed you to beat Trump as kind of like the emergency guy in 2020, but why are we going to nominate someone who's 82 if Trump isn't going to be on the ballot?
The other thing that you go back to, too, you kind of wonder if Biden was doing himself any favors when he did say during the campaign, like, I'm going to be a bridge.
Yeah,
I'm going to be a bridge.
It's a long bridge, folks.
You kind of have to wonder, like
the Bay Bridge.
And you wonder why you're getting these questions from people now. The other thing, just to note on Trump and whether it's Trump or not, I mean, we did, I will say, if you go back and read the stories of a certain visit the president made to Florida this week as well, and standing next to a certain governor there in Florida too, it was interesting, some of the kind of tit-for-tat comments. It was mostly, focused on hurricane recovery. But if you look at these last few weeks, especially with the flying of migrants to Democratic strongholds and the president's strong kind of comments back at him for that, as well as kind of their comments while they were staying next to each other during that speech. I thought it was interesting and something to watch as well.
Anita, what are the factors that Trump will be weighing right now in terms of his decision on whether he's going to run again?
Yeah, it is. Gosh, it's, you didn't ask me, is he going to run? And it's a good thing you didn't, because 4 years of covering Donald Trump, and I will never predict anything. Nothing surprises me, though. I remember the end of the administration after he lost the election, but didn't say he lost, but before January 6th. So those last few weeks, there were a lot of people that were his advisors, still his advisors, who were saying, he might not do it, actually. He wants to continue to be a force. He wanted the attention. He wanted to matter. He wants to continue to matter. And they were kind of saying, he might not do it. But that's not what they're saying now, that he is wanting to run. It might be part of the Biden-Trump thing, that he does want to run, that he has had to, there have been people that have said to him, his advisors, don't announce before the midterms, which there was times, with him, it's hard to tell if it's like a fleeting moment where one day he decides one day he thinks about something and then it's gone. But he did think about announcing before the midterms, and I think that's probably not going to happen for a lot of reasons that, would not be good for his party. But, I think obviously he has a lot of factors in terms of with their political factors. He also has a lot of investigations going on right now. So for those not keeping track, he has a New York City criminal investigation. There's the New York State investigation that we just saw. The Attorney General file suit about. There's obviously the investigation in Georgia into what did he do to try to change the election results. And of course, we've seen most lately, we've seen all this issue with the Department of Justice and these classified documents that he took, and did he take them all, and has he returned them all? So there's a lot going on there. In terms of his family, and didn't even mention the, January 6th hearings as well. So he's got a lot of factors. He's got a lot of things going on with his family, his business, himself. And I think those are all going to be a factor. It's just so hard for him to resist, though. He wants to show that he can win again. He wants to matter. I mean, I never would have imagined, just going back to your, Mitch McConnell, everybody thinking, they all thought it was over. I never would have believed that we would be 2 years in, almost 2 years in. And not only is he still a factor, this is the thing, he didn't know if he could still get that attention, but he is the factor, right? He and his party, he is the leader of his party. So, I won't place any bets on it, but he does want to run. He's talking about running. He's thinking about when he wants to make that announcement. There are a lot of factors, though, out there politically, and of course with his family as well, and his business.
Well, and does a decision to run help on any of, not on the legal front, but politically, those investigations? It's much easier, again, for him to say, you're coming after me for political reasons, a witch hunt, if you're a candidate versus not a candidate, right?
He has made, that is his thing that he's done. And he's done it with great success, in that he's taken everything that he's gotten, all the attacks, and he's turned it into a political win. I mean, he's even turned the impeachments into it's a witch hunt. So he will use that to his benefit for sure politically. That doesn't, of course, help him with whatever other consequences he faces, but he's already doing it. This is, anyone who's ever been to a Trump rally, maybe none of you have. I've been to many, many of those.
Missing out, folks.
That's the speech, right? It continues to be the speech. It was the speech, before he was elected, people were after him, right? It was the speech for 4 years, and it continues to be the speech that, look at what they're trying to do. And it does resonate with voters. It resonates with people across the country, not who are in elected office, but just rank and file people, voters across the country. They do think that. They do think that people are after him, that politicians are after him, and they are doing all these things because they don't like him. It's partisan. So he will use this, and he is using this.
To be honest, what Anita just mentioned, too, makes it... I'm somewhat surprised when I go back and read the comments from Republican members of Congress who thought that he would just fade away after January 6th, and thought that the support would just be gone. I mean, if you've been to a Trump rally or you've talked to some of these voters, there is a certain sense of loyalty to Trump and not necessarily the GOP as well. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was outside the Capitol on January 6th, but started at the Ellipse where Trump was giving his speech when he said to go down Pennsylvania Avenue. And I was interviewing a couple. They had been on and off. So they identified as independents prior to the Trump administration. And I asked them what they were going to do if Pence certified the vote. And they said, I'm leaving this party immediately. I don't even know if I'm going to participate in the system again. That's one anecdote, but that is a kind of sentiment that I've heard at least over and over again in reporting. So it does surprise me that, I mean, obviously that day was a tragedy and extraordinary in terms of what happened. But I'm still somewhat surprised when I go back and read statements of basically thinking that he would just go away.
And Amy, in many ways, there are two factions of the Republican Party.
Yeah, this is the interesting part, because first of all, Trump doesn't want to exist in a post-presidential world, right? Like, so to him, he's not. And this is, again, these are ways to not do that. I mean, presidential primaries it's more chess than it is checkers, right? A lot of things have to happen, but I think it speaks more widely to a systemic issue in this country with where are our party politics going. We are, for all intents and purposes, a two-party system, but yet when you see what's happening in these parties, is smaller and smaller amounts of people are identifying with parties and voting in primaries, and then you're getting more sometimes extreme candidates, on both of these, and they're getting through the primary, and then people aren't happy when it comes to a general. And to Anita's, point, if these independents are where you're they're making decisions for people they didn't even bring to the table, So I think for a lot of people, we have to look at this division between the party. It's so quickly they'll walk away. Is it more personality politics? And so what are the values of these parties, and what is the core and the center? That's not to say that the Democrats don't have to have their own problems with, challenges within their own party. But the question is, if you're looking at this, and I think a really good point that you brought up is that you don't have all the time in the world. There is as somebody who's been on the party side, there is a process, and there's how you get on these ballots in these states. For you guys who have I've been out on the candidate side of the trail, you've been out on the journalistic side, you see there's a process that has to be put into place. So decisions will have to be made, in a way, but a lot of it is dependent on, this personality and what breath and life comes out of this. But it is a concern not only on the national level, but down ballot. I think that's why you saw some of the recruiting, in some of these states. It's interesting when, and you saw in Congresswoman Liz Cheney's race, it's 80,000, I don't think around 80,000, 100,000 people are deciding who's going to be, even their candidate, for this situation. So there's some systemic issues at play that we're seeing, as we decide who are the candidates that are going to be right in front of us in this election.
Donald Trump.
The T word, Trump. The Trump factor.
The T word, Trump. The Trump factor.
Trump's world, the Trump White House, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald who? Trump's cabinet. Trump, Donald Trump. Biden and
Trump, and whether it's Trump or not.
What are the factors that Trump will be weighing right now?
Donald Trump thing, a Trump rally,
loyalty to Trump, the Trump administration.